Good morning, little Smithies. It's Grampy here, and I had been thinking about a verse that had been familiar to me a number of years ago from Isaiah, and we will get to that. It's in chapter 50, but I also thought it would be consistent with the Isaiah 50 passage we're going to look at to talk about what it really means to wait upon the Lord. And this has been one of the most enriching and insightful word studies, especially in the Old Testament, that I've come across. And we'll look at three familiar passages. They're familiar to me, but probably at least a couple of them will be familiar to you. In the book of Psalms. So first of all, so the question of waiting on the Lord. In Psalm 27, verses 13 and 14, David says, I had fainted, except I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Isaiah 40, verse 1 says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. And then in Isaiah chapter 40, probably the most familiar of the passages that reference this concept of waiting upon the Lord. He says in chapter 40, verse 31. Well, we'll get a little context. Verse 29 says, He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might, he increaseth strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So let's just take a quick look at what this word translated as wait, or wait upon, or waited patiently, what the depth of the meaning behind that word translated in most English translations as wait really means. The Greek word, I'm not going to be able to say the word, but the Greek word means literally to bind together by twisting. And the image here is not of someone who's just, checking their watch and waiting some period of time for the bus to come or for God to show up, right? It's not just waiting and busying yourself with other things while you're waiting for the alarm to go off or whatever it is. It's this idea of binding ourselves together for strength, for desperation, or in desperation, for a handhold, right? To cling to something while we're waiting for deliverance to come. We're holding fast. And the beauty of the picture is while we're waiting, not only are we holding fast, like for our life, God is holding us. And so, there are ways that ropes are twisted together, right? So that as the tension increases on that rope, those cords of the rope, they tighten around each other. And the tighter the pull down, let's just say, the tighter that rope is going to hold. And so that's why you see in two of these references that I read, not only is the psalmist or the prophet in Isaiah's case just kind of waiting and biding his time, he's recognizing that he needs strength and that he's faint. In verse 13 of Psalm 27, he says, I had fainted, except I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And now, how many of us are in the land of the living today? Like Me, everybody raise your hand. You can watch this, right? You are in the land of the living. And what David is saying is if I didn't believe that God could come through here in the here and now where I need it, I'd given up, right? But because I'm trusting in him, and not only am I trusting with him, I'm securing my hold on him like it's my life. My life depends upon it. That's what this means. It means like trusting in and holding on to God like our life depends on it. And with the belief that he is not going to let go and that he is going to come through when we need it, right? Where we need it. So look at Isaiah 40 again. And, even Psalm 40, where the following verses talk about that David waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined and heard my cry. It says he brought me up out of the pit. So you can picture David standing or sinking in the mud, right? And throwing up an arm. And God reaches down and grabs it, lifts him up out of the miry muck and clay, right? And sets him on a solid rock. So Isaiah 40 similarly precedes the familiar verses there in verse 31, a familiar verse, with talking about how even the young men, the strength, right? The epitome of strength would be the young men in his prime, right? Even the youths, he says, will fail, will fall, right? Their strength has a limit, and it's not enough, really, ultimately. And so they that wait upon the Lord, like for their life, find renewed strength. And they will mount up with wings as eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. So the takeaway from this is whenever you see, especially in the Old Testament, the word translated wait, don't think it's just waiting around for something to happen, right? It's in that moment I am clinging to God as if my life depended on it, with the assurance that it's not ultimately the strength of my grip that's going to bring deliverance. It's the strength that God brings to this handhold, right? This rope that's under tension that is not going to give because God is holding on. And I'm not letting go either, right? Now, let's just take this imagery here to one more place in Isaiah. And it's not exactly the same word. And in fact, I'm not even sure that the word wait appears in the passage. But it's implied because you can see what's going on here. In Isaiah chapter 50, we're just going to look at two verses, kind of grab them a little bit out of context, but the context doesn't change the lesson here, the point of these two verses. Isaiah, or through the Lord, is saying, who is among you? Meaning the covenant group of believers. Who's among you that fears the Lord, that obeys the voice of his servant, that walks in darkness and has no light? Let him trust in the name of the Lord and stay upon his God. So here's the scene here, is there are believers and out there in the congregation or the community that Isaiah is speaking to, God is speaking to. And he's saying, who's out there among you that's trusting in God for direction, for hope, for strength, but you're kind of in darkness. You don't know what's going on, right? Where is the deliverance? What's really happening here? We don't see it. It's almost like, yes, we're trusting in God, but I don't see a way out. Okay? Isaiah's encouragement to them is trust in the name of the Lord and stay upon your God. And here you get the picture of faith with the word is not hope, but it's staying. It's a consistent, standing upon. Like, I am not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let go. Sort of trusting, right? Very similar to the imagery of waiting upon the Lord, right? But then he says in verse 11, behold, all you that kindle a fire and compass yourselves about with sparks, walk in the light of your fire and in the sparks that you have kindled. This shall you have of my hand. you shall lay down in sorrow. Now, here is the great temptation. And we can see this tragically played out in a lot of places, right? Key places in Scripture where we're in that place where we're feeling the water rising, right? We're feeling the darkness kind of coming down, and we don't know what to do. God is not showing up. You can think of Saul, right? He's there waiting for Samuel to show up to offer the sacrifice. And he's looking around, and the people are getting agitated or unsettled. And he just does it himself, right? And just about that time, Samuel shows up and said, Saul, what have you done, right? And it's the first of Saul's great sins. Abraham, right? Promised he's going to have a son, waiting and waiting years. No baby coming, right? So what does he do? He walks in the light of his own fire, finds Hagar, and we know the rest, right? But that's the temptation, is when we're holding on to a promise, but we start to get impatient with the outcome of the deliverance we're hoping for, of the answer we're hoping for, the direction we're hoping for, and so we decide to create our own fire and walk in the light of it. And in that moment you never know when, like, just around the corner, Samuel's going to show up, right? You don't know that the answer might just be waiting around the corner, and we cut off the our hope for God's coming through because we've decided we're going to take things into our own hands. And Isaiah says, God says, if you do that, you decide you walk in the light of your own fire, we rationalize it, we get impatient, we say, it's too hard, I can't hold on anymore, and we let go and we just do it on our own, right? We're trusting in our strength or whatever. We're looking to someone else other than that lifeline that is God. He says, this is what I'm just telling you. You will lie down in sorrow. And invariably, there's always redemption, right? Offered. I guess ultimately with Saul, there wasn't, when the kingdom was taken away. But, there's the lesson here, is when we are trusting God in a situation, particularly something big, is when I think the temptation to take things into our own hands is the strongest. Let's not do that. Let's keep holding on to God and not create our own fire to dispel the darkness, because it's a false fire, and the enemy will always come and then say, God's not going to come through, and we'll rationalize it in our mind. And so there you go. Waiting upon the Lord is way more than just hanging around waiting until something happens, right? It's holding fast to the lifeline God is throwing us, and holding on for all we've got, knowing that He's holding on to us, and we just need to stand firm. And even if we can't see where this is going or what the answer is going to be when and all of that, not to let go of God, and not to create our own light, come up with our own answer to this solution, because invariably it's going to be of the flesh, and we will lie down in sorrow. And I don't want that. Right? And I certainly don't want that for any of you all. So God bless you. I hope you have a great day. And remember that your Grampy loves you. God bless you.